We begin with our letter and we notice that it is one giant block of text. How are we going to go about identifying all of these different subjects, verbs, objects, and indirect objects? Well, the first thing we need to do is separate it into easily readable clauses. Now, I don't say sentences because of two very important factors. One, a sentence could have several clauses, that is, several subjects and predicates held together by either conjunctions like and, or prepositional phrases, or various other dependent-independent clause modifiers. But the more important reason that we don't want to do this sentence by sentence is that this is a personal letter, and Samuel Revens does not write perfect sentences. He tends to use lots of dashes and semicolons, and so it kind of meanders from thought to thought, and it doesn't follow things in a simple, straightforward way. We have to be a little bit flexible. So we'll start at the beginning here, and we have this date line and location line, and these are just formal parts of a letter. We don't need to worry about those. The same with the salutation of "My dear Chapman." Where we want to begin is here at the beginning of the actual letter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new line for every single clause. And I'm going to talk you through the first two so you can see what's important and what isn't important and how to indicate those different clauses. So first, let's read the first sentence. On the road to Wellington last week, I got your note of the 20th instant at the post office and intended to be sure to answer it, but managed to miss the steamer, for which I was sorry, because I was anxious to state I have so much requiring my presence that I cannot go away just now, and that therefore you cannot let Charlie come too soon. Now, there's a dash here, and I'm going to consider that the end of the sentence because it's going on for a bit too long, and that seems like a fairly cohesive thought. But as I'm sure you could hear from the way I spoke, there are lots of clauses in this sentence. So how do we separate it out? Well, let's start with the first idea, the first subject-verb pairing. On the road to Wellington last week is a prepositional phrase. It just tells us when and where this happened, so we can kind of ignore it for the moment. I got your note of the 20th instant at the post office and. Now that and is a conjunction, so it's basically sticking two different clauses together. So I'm going to separate that and out and just work with this first clause here. So again, on the road to Wellington, not important for our current analysis. I got your note of the 20th instant at the post office. At the post office, again, a prepositional phrase, where he got it, not important. Of the 20th instant, or the 20th of this month, that tells us a bit about the note, but not important for the basic idea of the sentence. Really, the clause is I got your note. That's really all we need. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the strike through function on a word to get rid of the bits that I don't necessarily need for this particular part of the analysis. I got your note. That is a single clause. There's a subject, I, a verb, got, and a direct object, your note. And that's all there is to it. Let's do another one just to make sure you understand. Intended to be sure to answer it, but. Again, but is another conjunction, so I'm going to separate that out. And if you look here, there doesn't seem to be a subject. Intended to be sure to answer it starts essentially with the predicate, but there is an implied I from this first part of the sentence. So I'm going to go ahead and put in brackets I. Now, anytime you're adding things to a document, it's really good practice to stick it in square brackets to remind yourself you added that to the document. That was not originally there. So I intended to be sure to answer it. So intended is the verb, I intended, and to be sure to answer it sounds like another verb, to be. But because it's an infinitive, the to making it so, This is actually a noun phrase, a verb acting as a noun phrase, which is called a participle. So I intended to be sure to answer it. To be sure to answer it is essentially the direct object of this sentence or this clause. Okay, we're doing pretty well. Let's go on to the next one. Managed to miss the steamer, for which I was sorry because I was anxious to state, and he goes on. Managed to miss the steamer, for which I was sorry. Now, for which I was sorry indicates a new clause, a dependent clause. I was just attacked by a moth. Okay. Now, for which is a special phrase that indicates that it's going to be followed by a dependent clause. This information, I managed to miss the steamer, he's giving more information about it, for which I was sorry. So we'll take the for which, use that as a divider, and look again at just managed to miss the steamer. And again, there's an implied I there. Managed and to miss the steamer, again, another participle phrase. Okay, let's keep going. We're almost there. I was sorry because I was anxious to state. Oh my goodness, he's doing quite a lot of these layers upon layers of clauses, isn't he? I was sorry because. Because, again, is a dependent clause indicator. So I was sorry. Now, was is a relational verb. It basically says equal to. I am equal to sorry. Because I was anxious to state that I have so much requiring my presence that I cannot go away just now. Okay, so he was anxious to state. So was anxious is actually the verb of this sentence. Was is the relational to anxious, which is his current state, or the direct object, for more or less. So I was anxious to state that I have so much requiring my presence that I cannot go away just now. Anxious to state I have so much requiring my presence I cannot go away just now is the entire predicate of was. That's describing his entire state. When we get to this and, we know we're starting yet another clause. And that therefore kind of indicates that it's a new clause. This is a dependent clause indicator. You cannot let Charlie come too soon. Now this is going to take a moment to actually parse. You is the subject. That's pretty easy. The verb is a little bit more difficult. Cannot is not a verb on its own. We actually need to have the second half of that verb. Cannot drink, cannot sleep, cannot let. So cannot let is our verb, which leaves Charlie come too soon. Now, Charlie come too soon implies that there is either an object or an indirect object, that is Charlie. But we have to sort of think about what type of verb let is. Is it a transitive or an intransitive verb? Is it something that is acting upon another person? Well, yes, it is letting Charlie. It's permitting Charlie. It's doing something to Charlie. So Charlie is the direct object of this sentence. Now, what is it letting Charlie do? Come too soon. So really the verb cannot let come too soon, Charlie, is the way that I would basically try to explain it in terms of those three parts. But it's sort of been arranged in a way that sounds better in English, which is cannot let Charlie come too soon. So there you go. That first sentence has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different clauses in it, which is a lot for a single sentence, but makes sense that this is a personal letter that's going to meander around several topics. So now what we need to do is to go through the rest of the document and find all the other clauses before we move on to the next stage. Okay, so now we've gone through this entire document and we've separated it into individual clauses as best we can. I'm sure I've made a couple mistakes, created a clause when really it was such an independent, or rather a dependent clause, that perhaps it didn't really need to be separated out, and I may have missed some. But the general point is that you try to do as many as you can, as best as you can, in order to get a sense of the grammar of the syntax being used by the author to convey their message and what hidden or subconscious ideas you might find from that information. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please consider hitting the like button below or subscribing to the channel. That'll let me know this is the type of video you want to see more of. And if you have any questions, comments, or just a suggestion for an upcoming video, please leave a comment below.